Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is the next video where we are quickly exploring the RE framework. Now the question, why exactly quickly? Recently I have got a request from a UiPath aspirant who said that I have a fair enough knowledge of UiPath but I am not able to understand how exactly does the flow navigate from one state machine to the other state machine. Hence, in this video, what we are doing, we are covering the basics of UiPath, but not in very much details, but at a very high level. In case you want to quickly see that how does a RE framework look like, how the exceptions are handled, how the state machines are working, this video is for you. In a limited amount of time, you will quickly get a gist of RE framework. In case you are looking for a complete tutorial on RE framework, we have already covered the same in the RE framework video series where we are covering all the aspects of RE framework one by one in detail. Not only those, we have created use cases with and without using orchestrator queues. We have created a solution which is called the generate offer letter solution, which is using RE framework with queues, and then we have created a solution which is generate the ID cards that is using RE framework without the queues with data tables or Excel. In case you are new to RE framework and want to explore all of this, I have provided all the links in the description for your reference. In case you also want to have such live conversation with me, all you have to do is just drop me a note on the email ID which is mentioned in the description and I shall reach to you. Also, coming to the channel for the first time, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to get the latest update. Having said that, let's get started. So first thing, right, which I understand is that you don't have the clarity that why exactly do we need RE framework. Okay, so we'll start from there. Okay, so first of all, there are three kinds of transactions which we can have, okay, which is linear, iterative, and transactional. Okay, so linear is something when you have to do the process only once. So I just start the process, I get the data, I process the data and end the process. So whenever we are writing any automation where exactly the automation has to be executed only once, we call it as a linear transaction. For example, I am writing an automation where an email is arriving, and whenever the email is there, I have to download the attachment and do something. So that is a linear process. Only once we have to do this. That is called a linear process. Okay. The next kind of transaction in automation is called an iterative transaction. Now, what is an iterative transaction? We initialize the application, we get the data, and when we get the data, there is a lot of data which we have to process. So getting back to the example where we have to read the email, I have to download the attachment, but when I download the attachment, let's say there are 50 attachments. Now I have to work on all the 50 attachments one by one. First attachment, second attachment, third attachment, and like that. So that is what it is called the iterative transaction. Okay, so what happens in the iterative transaction? Whenever the robot is processing the transaction, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's say the fifth transaction breaks. Now what happened? The complete execution will stop and the robot will not execute the transaction number 6, 7, 8. Right? So that is iterative, where you process the data at once. So if successful, everything will be successful. If the robot stops at between, then your complete process stops. Right? So that is iterative. Now the third one, which is being used in RE framework, is called the transactional processing. Now what is transactional processing? Each of these attachment will be now treated as a separate transaction. That means if our transaction number 1 is getting failed, it will have no impact on the transaction number 2. If transaction number 2 fails, it has no impact on transaction number 3. So that is why it is called a transactional processing. Okay.
Okay, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, so RE framework is used to build the transactional processing. Okay, so that is the three type of transaction: linear, iterative, and transactional. All of this is explained in detail in the video series which I have already shared. You can again go back and refer to that, but at a very high level, there are three: linear, iterative, and transactional. And RE framework is used to build a transactional processing. Okay, where each of the transaction is separate. which means if my one transaction fails, it has no impact on the other transaction. Okay, if I have such a process, then only we go for an RE framework. RE framework is built completely on the concept of state machines. Okay, why exactly are we using state machine? First of all, it is easy to add and remove the state. There is a separate business logic. We can actually separate the business and the system logic. We can have self transition, and we can have n number of final states. Again, all of this slides I am taking from that video only, so you can refer that, and that will give you a clarity what I am talking about. Okay, so before you go and understand the RE framework, right? First of all, you should be having a clear idea that how does a state machine work. Okay, so this is an example of a state machine. Whenever you drag and drop a state machine, this is how it looks. So a state machine has three sections: entry, exit, and transition. So the first state in the RE framework, or in the state machine, I would say, the first block in the state machine executed is called the entry block. Okay, whatever code you have written in the entry block will get executed first. The second, whatever you have specified in the transition will get executed. And once the transition is confirmed, whatever you have specified in the exit block will get executed. So if you understand this diagram, you would be easily able to understand the RE framework. I'll just repeat. The first, the entry is executed, then the transition is executed, and then the exit is executed. Okay, and then there is one state which is called final state, which has only one section, which is called the entry block, right? So just remember this thing, because this is the foundation of RE framework. Okay, now I have a full video which is explaining this state machine in details. You can also refer that. Okay, now this is how a RE framework looks like. As you told,
Yes.
it has four state: init, get, transition, and process transaction. Now your problem is how, as a developer, I would know where exactly I should put what thing, right? Let us try to see that how actually
Yes,
this
sir.
this thing works, right? Let me go back to my UiPath Studio. So first of all, if you go here, you would see something which is called the Robotics Enterprise Framework, which is available here. Okay, so if you read this statement, it says
Yes,
creates a
yes.
transactional process. Right now, do you understand what is transactional?
Yes, sir.
Transactional means wherever there is something which is repeating. So if I just give you an
Yes,
example
yes.
of transaction, how does it look like? Okay, so for example,
Yes, 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 sir.
I tell you that I have a use case where I have to read the emails. Okay, and for each email,
Okay.
okay, for each of the email, what we have to do is, let's say for each email we have to download the attachment. Okay, now what
Okay,
is the
okay,
thing which we are
okay.
repeating? Can you see what is the thing which we are repeating here?
Email is repeating.
Email is repeating, right? So that
And
means here my transaction would be an email, right?
yeah, yeah, yes, sir.
So this part of
Yes, sir.
downloading the attachment, this logic is exactly the same for all the emails, right? Only thing which is
Yes,
changing
yes,
is
yes,
this
sir.
email. So my transactions become a email. Let us take a different example. Okay, you are working for a client,
Okay.
and the client is taking care of the service request. So we create tickets, right? Service tickets, right?
Yes,
Now
yes.
in the process, you would have to resolve the service ticket. We actually have to resolve the service tickets. Now the process of resolving the service tickets is exactly the same. So I tell you that I have 15,000 tickets, right? Now how do we resolve the tickets? So to resolve the tickets, I just log into an application, right? Then what do? I just let's say key the ticket, key the ticket ID, and then what I do?
Yes,
Then
yes,
I
sir.
resolve it, right? So this is the typical process which the human is doing as of now. Now if I ask you what is the transaction here?
Ticket ID.
Ticket ID is the transaction number. Okay, that is correct. Ticket ID is the transaction number. And what is the process? This thing is the process, right?
Yes, yes,
Logging
sir.
into the application,
Yes.
keying in the ticket, and resolve. This process is exactly the same for all the what you call all the tickets. You have to do the same thing, right? So that means
Yes.
this is a kind of transactional process. Now a question to you. Let's say you have got
Yes.
1500 tickets, right? Your bot was able to
Okay.
resolve only 100 tickets, only 1000 tickets it was able to resolve. Okay. When it was resolving the 1001 ticket, you got some exception. Now, what do you
Okay.
think? What should happen? Should the process stop or should it go to 1002, 1003? Sorry. What should happen?
Yeah, it will continue.
It should continue or it should completely stop the process. What should happen?
It should continue, sir.
Right? So it should continue. That
Yes.
means all these 15,000 tickets has to be separate from one another, right? Because
Yes. Yes.
all of them
Yes.
has
Yes,
to be,
sir.
there should be no dependency in between. If there is a dependency, then you would not be able to achieve this, right? So that means all
Yes.
these
Yes.
15,000 thing are the separate transactions, right? So if I ask you, if I
Yes.
have 15,000 tickets, how many transactions I would have? I would have 15,000 transactions, right?
15,000
And
transactions.
all of the
Yes.
transactions would be separate from one another. There is no dependency. If I create a process where there is a dependency, then it is not a transactional process. Okay.
Yes. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Got it.
Understood the concept of transactions process? Okay.
Yes.
Now
Yes. Yes, sir.
this thing can be anything. That completely depends on your project which you are doing in RE framework. Okay. It can be a service ticket,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
can be an email, it can be a file. Okay. Let's say I tell you that you have to write an automation. Okay. Where I have
Okay.
uh, let's say 500 PDF files in a folder. Okay. And I have to
Okay.
read
Okay.
the PDF, then extract the data and send the mail. Okay. So this is what I have to do. I have
Okay.
5,000 PDFs in a folder. I have to read the PDF, extract the data and send the
Yes.
email.
Yes.
So this process is exactly the same,
Yes.
right? Now, what is the transaction here?
Yes,
If I
sir.
ask you, what is
Yes.
the transaction?
PDF.
The transaction would be the PDF
PDF.
file,
No, transaction process reading, extracting, and sending.
right? So the transaction would be
Yes.
the
Yes, sir.
PDF file, right? So whenever you start any RE framework, the first thing you should have answer is what is the transaction, right? If you understand, that is absolutely easy. Now let's come to the RE framework. Okay. So when you come to the RE framework, this is
Yes,
how
sir.
the RE framework looks like. Okay. The main part, this is a state
Okay.
machine, right? So if I
Yeah.
just collapse
Yes.
this,
Yes.
how many sections do you see? Entry, exit, and transition.
Entry exit transaction.
Now, what is the first thing which will
Yes. Yes.
execute? I just now showed you, right? First, it
Entry.
will execute the entry,
Yes,
right?
sir. Entry.
So entry. So let's see what is the
Yes.
code
Yes.
written in the entry. In the entry, we have this thing, right? System exception is equal to nothing, right? So again, I have explained all of this thing in very detail in the previous videos, right? In the playlist, you can
Yes.
explore that, but I will just give you that how actually this thing works, right? So whenever the RE framework is starting, it says that I don't have any exception. Okay. So whenever you are starting a project, right, do you
Yes. Yes.
expect any
Yes.
exception at the beginning? At the
No.
beginning, you will
No,
see,
sir.
right? There is system exception is an exception object and it is set to nothing. RE framework says, I don't have any exception. Okay. And we are good with it. Then it goes and it reads a configuration file. What is a configuration file? RE framework in the data folder here, it has got a config file. So whatever things we feel might change
Okay.
in future, we put it in the config file, right? You don't have to write any
Okay.
code, anything to uh,
Okay.
read this config. Everything is written inside this one, which is called init all settings. Okay. RE framework has already written the code to read
Yes.
all this
Yes.
config. Everything is done for me, right? So first thing RE framework does is reading of the
Yes, sir.
config file. In case there is some exception in
Config
reading
file.
config file, right? In case there is some exception, then it will throw that exception and it will go to the catch system exception, right? But let's say everything is successful. Now a
Yes.
question to you. whenever you start any automation, do you want to start in a clean environment
Yeah.
or in a messy environment? How would you like to do the automation?
In clean environment.
Clean environment, right? So for example, I will just take this example
Yeah,
of
yeah.
the service tickets, right? So I have to log into this application, and let's say
Yes.
this application is a web application. Okay, it's a web application now, and this web application is opening in Chrome. Now if I have to, first of all, the first thing you would have to check which all applications your automation is using. So for me, my automation is using a Chrome, let's say a PDF and an email. So whichever application my automation is going, I will just
Oh,
kill all the application in this one, kill all process. Okay, this one,
yes, yes, sir.
which means I will clean the environment. Once my environment is cleaned, the next thing I will do is I will reopen the application, because if I have to do something, I would have to reopen the application, right? Because if I have to say that resolve the tickets, that where will you get the tickets? So you would have to reopen the application. So that reopening of the application is done in this one, which is called
Yes,
init all applications. Any question till this point you have?
yes. In kill all process, we will kill whatever the process we required or anything will
Whichever
be
exes
clean.
you are using. Exe, when I say, let's say I am using PDF, right? So
That means
I'm
in config file, whatever the process we.
no. So you will kill whatever application your program is interacting with.
Mhm.
So for example, your program is interacting with Edge, right? Your program is interacting with Internet Explorer. So I will go here, open
Yes, yes.
workflow, okay, and then I would say here
Okay.
kill process. Okay, this is how you do it. And my automation is going to use Internet Explorer. So I would just write here Internet Explorer. That's it. Because what would happen if
Okay.
Internet Explorer is already open, this block will kill that. It will clean the environment.
Okay.
Kill,
Whatever required, we are in kill process we are placing.
right.
Yes.
We are killing it. That means I want it
Yes,
to
sir.
have a fresh. So how does it looks like? Let me show you. Okay. So let's say, okay,
Okay.
my bad. I forgot to write the complete one. IEX. Okay, so this is Internet Explorer, right? So let's say my automation is supposed to work at 10:30, right? But somebody has
Yes, yes.
opened this Internet Explorer. Now, how this thing will work? See, Internet Explorer is open here. When your automation would work, like,
Yes.
see what would happen if I just go here and I say run the file. First, it will go and it will kill this Internet Explorer. So if the robot is running, right? Just let us just wait for the robot to run. Okay. Okay, yeah, see, so it has killed the Internet Explorer. See, so that means when
Yes, yes.
whatever session was open, if the Internet Explorer is hang or anything, it will clean everything and it will clear the environment, right? So all the things will be cleared here. So, but remember, you will kill only the application which your robot is using, not all, right? I'm not going to kill the PPT or the Zoom or anything, right? I'm using Internet Explorer, so I will only kill Internet Explorer. Got this?
Yes. In process name, we should specify only name of that process, right?
Which one? Sorry. Yeah, in the process name, right? Here you would specify only the not.exe, only
Process.
the process which you want to kill.
Okay, got it, sir.
And how do I know the process name? You just have to click on the application, right click, uh,
Uh,
open the file location. Okay. And in here, right
oh,
click, go to the properties.
okay.
And in here at the end, you see this one, msedge.exe. So if I have to click, if I have to kill msedge, I would use msedge, right?
Yes, yes, yes. Without
Okay,
extension, we are placing
without
it.
extension, right? Without
Yes.
extension. Yeah. Okay. Any more questions
Yes.
here?
No, 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 sir. Understood
Okay.
kill all process.
Okay. So kill all process is done, config is done, and then whatever you have killed, right? We would have to reopen those application, right?
Yes, sir.
So if I have to use Internet Explorer or the Google Chrome, I would have to reopen because just now I have killed them, right? So to
Yes.
reopen them, I would write the code in the init all application. So
Yes.
init all
Yes.
application means initializes all the applications. See what is written here. Open applications which are used in
Open.
the process. Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
So if you have to log into an application, if you have to log into some
Open
websites,
browser
open
activities.
browser, all of this will come
Yes.
inside this block, right? So do you think as of now I have written
Yes.
any
Yes.
business
Yes,
logic?
sir. Got it.
Any business logic I have written as of now?
No, sir.
No, right? So this is all
No. No. No, sir.
only the system related thing, right? We have not touched any of the business part. So that is why if you see, this entire block is encapsulated in a try block. And do you understand exception handling?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So
Yeah.
exception
Yeah.
handling is, I have again a dedicated playlist on exception handling. You can refer that. That will give you a clear idea. But if you see here, all of this initialization is encapsulated and only one kind of exception is thrown, which is called a system exception.
System exception.
There
Yes.
is
Yes.
no
It's
business
universal
exception,
exception.
right? There is no business
Yeah.
exception here because we are not doing
Yes.
anything to the business, right? So now I told you, right?
Yes.
State machine has three parts: entry, transition, and exit.
Exit.
So in the
Yes.
entry,
Yes.
it has got two transition now. So let us see what are these two transition. So at the beginning, RE framework told me that the system exception is nothing. That means I have got no exceptions. Okay. Now during the process, if it get any exception, it will come to this exception block and it will set this object, which is system exception object,
Yeah, sir.
right? Now, if you go to the transition and you see, it has got
Yes.
two transition, 1 and 2. It says if the system exception object is not nothing, that means in case you have got some exception, you have to go to end process. Understand this thing? If you
Mm.
got any exception in the init,
Yeah.
that means system exception
Yes, sir.
is not nothing. That means you have got some exception in initialization, in reading config, in opening the browser. You have to end the process. But if this exception object is nothing, that means still it is blank, right? There is no
Yes.
exception.
Yes.
Then you have to go to get transition data. Okay. So this is how RE framework controls, and this is what is written here. Initialization,
Good.
if it is system exception, then it will go to end process.
Get
That means
transaction.
end process in case of system
In
exception.
process.
In case it is successful, now what would you mean by successful? If you are able to kill everything, if you are able to open everything properly
If
and
there
there
is
is
no exception.
no exception, then you go to this stage.
Mm.
In case there is exception, you go to
Get
end
transaction.
process. End process.
In. Yes.
Now what is this
Yes.
end process? End process is a
Yes.
simple thing where you
Yes.
close everything, right? So in the initialization we open, in the close we close the applications. So
Yes. Yes.
open browser we do, right? So if I have opened the browser, then I would have to close the browser also, right? So I would write the logic of closing the browser
Yes,
inside
sir.
this one. Now what happens? Let's say you have written a logic to close the browser and you get an exception. RE framework has handled that thing for also. So in case you get an exception while closing, it will forcefully kill the application.
Okay.
And which is this XAML, kill all process. See, this is the same XAML which we have already used here, Internet Explorer. So kill all process is invoked twice. Do you understand this thing? What just happened? Let me just repeat. Okay. In the close all
Yes.
application, you close the application, right? You go and you say close the
Yes.
browser.
Yes, sir.
But let's say you got an exception while closing the browser. Now what happens? Now RE framework will say that the graceful close or the soft close was failed. That's why we are going to forcefully close. And what is this forcefully close? This is nothing but the kill all process,
Kill, kill all process. Yes,
right?
sir. Got it.
So
Yeah.
understood these two stages, initialization and end process.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Any question in these two stages?
It's something is code is written right, sir. System exception is nothing. Is
Mhm.
not nothing.
Hmm.
How the code is?
Okay.
It's a .NET code, sir.
No, it's not a .NET code. It's a simple if activity. Okay. So if you see here, how does RE framework will know whether it is successful or if it is fail? Okay, RE framework has to know, right, whether it is successful or if it is fail. So how does RE framework know? At the beginning, RE framework sets a variable. This is nothing but a variable. See, this is a variable, exception variable,
Yeah, yeah.
and it is
Okay,
set to
okay.
nothing. What does it means? That there is no exception. Okay.
Nothing means it's already predefined keyword or like that, sir.
Yeah, nothing. It's a value, which means that it is
Nothing.
absolutely blank. There is nothing in it. So there is no exception as of now. Okay.
Instead of nothing, we can give zero like that, sir.
No.
No.
Zero would be a value, right? So zero is something, right? Zero is a value. Nothing
Okay,
is
okay. I
that
got
it
it.
has got no exception. It is
Completely
absolute.
blank.
Right. Now, when there is an
Yes,
exception
yes.
in the exception block, RE framework will put that exception in the system exception. So in case of exception, this system exception object will have some value. And what would be that value? The exception value, right?
Exception.
So based
Yes,
on
sir. I
this,
got it. Then.
based on this value only, it will decide whether I have to go to the get transition or I have to go to the end process. Okay. So if you see here, it says that
Yes,
if the
sir.
system exception is nothing, that means it is blank. So you go to get transaction data.
Completely.
If it is
Get
not
trans.
nothing, that means
Otherwise, end process.
you go to end process, right? So that's why that is the simple thing here, right?
Yes,
there is
sir.
there is no magic happening in the RE framework. It's all code, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
initialization, you got a system
Yeah.
exception, you go to end process, you go here, you go to here. Because if you get a exception in opening the browser, you are not able to read the file, you are not able to open the application, there is no point in running the automation, right? So that's why it go to end process. Understood
Yeah.
these two stages?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Understood.
Okay. Now the next thing is, if you read this, what does it says? Get the transaction data, right? Now this is the stage
Yes.
where you have to decide what is your transaction, right? What is your transaction? Is your transaction a data table? Is your transaction a list of emails? Is your transaction is a queue, right? So by default, if
Okay.
you will see, right, if I just open this one, you don't have to do anything in this get transaction data. All you have to do is go to this XAML,
Yeah.
which is called get transaction data. Okay. If you click on import arguments, here you would see there are two things.
Okay, sir.
One is transaction data and one is the transaction
Yeah.
item. So by default, RE framework works on queues.
Mm.
Okay. So it says that my transaction item is a queue
Yes.
item,
Yes, sir.
right? But let's say if I am working on a service ticket, right? And if I'm working on the list of emails, so my transaction item would change from queue item to whatever it is, right? You can change it. But if you are using the default RE framework, all you have to do is just
Q
specify.
item means in
Queue item means you would add all these
in
15,000 tickets to queue. Yes.
yes. But in orchestrator, the same
Yes.
name it will automatically create, sir.
No. It will not create. So
By
how does
default,
this
it will
work?
be created,
No. So
or
if you go
we
here,
need to do.
wait, let me show you. In the configuration file, that's why I told you, right? So go back and watch the videos which I shared to you, the RE framework one, right? Because this has all the basics. So if you go to this
Yeah.
one config, in the config, there is something which is orchestrator queue name. Okay. So by default,
Yes.
this get transaction data will read the data from get transaction item, right? It is going to read all the item one by one from the queue. But where is the queue? We would have to tell, right? So if you go to the properties, it is reading from
Yes.
the config queue name,
Config file. Yeah.
from the config file queue name. So you would have to specify the
Yes.
queue name here. So as of now, if I run this process, my robot will expect a process ABC queue in the orchestrator. If it is not able to
Yes.
find, it will stop the process. Okay.
Yes.
So
Yes.
in the get transaction data, you don't have to touch anything. It is by default coded to work with orchestrator queue. All you have to do is just put the queue name in the config file and it will automatically
Okay.
start working. Okay.
Yes.
Now a question to you. If I have
Yeah.
got 10 transactions, how many times should I run the process?
10 times.
10 times. If I have got 50 transactions, how many times it should run? 50 times, right?
50 times.
Right.
Yes,
But
sir.
what happens if someday you come and there is no transaction as well? There is no data to process. You have got 0 emails. So what should happen in that case?
It will no data means end process. It will
End
go to
process, right?
end process.
So this is that thing, no
Yes,
data.
yes,
You come to,
yes, sir.
so you come to this queue and today you got 0 emails, right? So that means it will go to no data and it will say end process. What else?
Yeah,
When what else a no data scenario will come? You are processing tickets and you have processed all the tickets 1000, 1001, 1002. Once all the tickets are finished, right? 4099. Once all the tickets are finished, then your queue will be empty, right? Then also you would have
yeah,
something which
yeah.
is called no data and you will end the process. So get transaction data
Yes, sir.
has two things. So get transaction data will tell you whether there is a new transaction available or not. Okay. So if I
Yes,
ask
yeah,
you when the process should execute only when there is a new transaction, right? Otherwise, there is no point in
yeah.
executing, right? So that's why RE
Yes,
framework says whenever there is a new transaction, I will go and execute the
yes.
process transaction. Okay. And
Okay,
if there is no
okay.
data, then I will end the process. But the
End process.
question is,
Yes,
how
yes.
would this guy know that whether there is a new transaction or not, right? Again, it is the same
Yeah.
concept. If you just open, collapse this, entry, exit, and
Same
transition,
exit transaction.
right? So
State
what
machine.
is the
Same
condition
that.
of transition? See, if you click on this one, new transition, it says that if I am get to any transaction item is available, okay?
Yes, yes, yes.
If
Yes,
any
yes.
transaction item is available, I will go to process
Yes.
transaction. If the transaction item is
Yes, sir.
nothing, that means it is blank, then I will go to end
End
process.
process.
Okay. So
Yeah.
that is how it has been coded, that if you get any transaction from transition from this one, get transaction data, you go to process transaction. If there is no data, you go to end process, and end process is exactly the same thing we have just seen, right? This one.
Yes, yes, sir. Got
Okay.
it.
Now
Got
I
it.
have got one transaction. Now what you will write in the process transaction? What do you want to do with, or
Yeah.
for this 15,000 queue, what do I want to do? So this is the code which you are going to write in the process transaction. Okay. So
Yeah.
log into the application is already done in the init
Okay.
section, right? We have already done, right? Open browser and
Yes,
all.
yes, yes, sir.
So now this is the part. What do you want to do
Yeah,
with
yeah,
the
yeah.
tickets? So what do you write in the ticket? This thing. Let me go to the second example. Read the bit,
Yes, sir.
extract the data, send the email. So this is the part you will do in the process transaction. Now, if I ask you,
Process transaction.
is
Yes,
this a
yes.
business logic or is it a system logic?
It's a business logic.
Business logic,
Yes,
right?
you're right.
This is a business logic. This
Yes,
is a
sir.
business logic. So the actual process,
Yeah,
what
yeah.
you are going to do with the transaction will come in the process transaction here.
Process.
Okay. Now,
Okay.
if you see here,
Yeah.
when I am writing the process, I can have three stages. I can have three things, right? What are the three things? The first thing is
Yeah.
that I may have the transaction successful, right?
Yes, yes.
So in
Yes,
case
sir.
now you tell me if transaction, I am processing transactions, okay, and I have got these
Yeah.
transactions like this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If transaction number 1 is successful, what should I do?
We will move to second one.
Okay, so let us see what happens here. If process transaction number 1 is successful, it will again go to get transaction. See,
Another
it is
transaction.
get the
Yeah.
another transaction, right? You tell me
Yes,
this
yes.
is also, this also got successful, this also got successful, right? And now let's say this
Yeah, yeah.
has got a business exception.
Yes.
Business exception,
Okay.
let's say the password, okay, so the application path is available, path is missing. Okay, some business exception.
Okay.
Now what should we do?
Okay. Okay. It will move to starting stage, I think.
No,
Import
if
that
there is a
action.
business exception, what should I do? Should I stop the process or should I continue?
Continue. You should continue.
You should continue to the fifth one. Okay, so let us
Yes,
see
sir.
here what happens in the RE framework. In case of business exception, it is also going to the next transaction,
A transaction. Yes, yes.
right? But now let's say again
Yeah.
we are coming here, it go to next transaction. This was successful, transaction number 6 was successful. While it was processing transaction number 7, okay, your
Yeah.
Internet Explorer hang. Okay, it got not
Okay.
responding.
System exception.
Now what should you do you want to retry it?
Yes, yes. Retry.
Okay, now one question, if you retry business exception, why didn't we retry business exception?
Mm,
Okay, I'll tell you the reason. Because if there is a business exception, there is no point in repeating it, right? Because if the path was not found, it will not be
yes,
able
yes,
to,
yes, sir.
it will not be available in the
Got
next
it.
one
Got
also.
it.
If a password is incorrect,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
even if you run it 10 times,
It's
20
time
times,
waste.
30 times, that
Same
does not make
exception
sense,
arise.
right? But in case
Yes,
of
sir.
Internet Explorer hang, if it is not responding, chances are there that if I kill it and retry,
It will
it might
again.
run.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So what is this kind of exception?
Yes.
System exception, right? So
Got
in system
it.
exception, what happens? See this arrow, where is this system exception going? It is again going
System
to the
exception.
init, right? Right? It is
Yeah.
again going to the init.
Yes,
And what
yes,
happens in the
yes.
init? It will again come here, it will config read, and then it will kill
Initial.
everything. And then it will again
Yes,
rerun that
yes.
transaction, right? Now the question
Yeah, yeah.
arises, how many times it will retry? So what do you think? Should it retry for n number of times? Should it keep retrying, or it should have a specific amount of number,
Specific because
right? So that number
yes,
is
yes, sir.
specified in the queue. Whenever you create the queue, right, in Orchestrator, that is the time you specify that how
Yes,
many
yes, yes.
numbers you want to retry, right? So that's why if you see here,
Yeah.
in case of success, it goes to the next transaction. In case of business exception, it goes for the next transaction. In case of system exception, it
Yeah.
goes to the init, right? And why this is happening? Just for the retry, right? So
Yeah,
in the
sir.
process transaction, if you will see again the same thing, we have entry, exit, and the transition.
Exit transition.
Okay, so whatever you write,
Yeah, sir.
whatever you have in the process, right? So if you see here, this is absolutely blank. So what exactly code you will write here? You will write this code, this code, this code.
Okay,
Okay,
okay.
whatever you have to do with the
Yeah.
process. So whatever is related to the business will come in the process part. Okay, so that is why whenever we say, right, that RE framework segregates the business and the system logic, what it means, all the system logic is handled in here, the business logic is
Yeah.
available here. Okay, so that is how this
Yes,
RE
yes,
framework
yes.
work. Any question in this photo, whatever you are looking on the screen? Understood this?
In this not, yeah, I completely understood. In config file, we are giving orchestra queue name and that value name, right, sir?
Hmm, hmm.
That value name can be anything, right?
Which one? This let me just open
In config file
this one, right? Value.
settings. Yeah,
So
that
this,
value means we need to same thing we need to define in orchestrator
see what is it?
also,
Read
right?
this description. What does it say?
Orchestrator queue, the value must match the queue name. Yeah, yeah, same thing. Okay.
Got it?
Same name. Yeah, yeah, got it.
Yes. And when you are creating this queue, then you will specify how many retries you want. And that retry will be for the system exception and not for the business exceptions.
Yes, yes,
Got
got
it?
it. Yes, sir.
Okay. So now do you think you would be able to create one small automations? Okay. So let me
Yes,
show it to you. Okay. Okay. So this is a complete use case. Okay, this one, HR offer letter
I need
generation,
to, yes,
dispatcher performer, this is completely built on RE
yes,
framework. Okay, if you practice this use case, you should be able to have a good understanding of the
yes,
complete flow. Okay, so just try this one. And I can see
yeah,
that
sir.
there is a, in my channel also, right, there is one more complete playlist for the RE framework where I am explaining all the stages in detail. Okay,
Yeah,
then
yeah,
we are
sir.
good. Any question? Was it helpful?
Yeah. One thing, sir.
Yeah, yeah.
In
Tell me.
initialization, we are just initializing all the applications like open browser, everything.
Mm-hmm.
After that, if there is any system exception, means we will go to end process.
End process,
If
right?
there is no means, we'll go to
Get
get
transaction.
transaction. In get transaction, we will not do anything.
Mm-hmm. We
It's
will
like
read
we
the,
defined in the queue whatever the
yes.
items,
Huh.
rate the items.
Hmm. Hmm.
Nothing more than that. You know, if it is successfully read means it will go to process transaction. If
It
the data
not
is there,
successfully read
no
if
data means it
if
will
there
go to
is in here, if there is any transaction which is available to process, right? If there is any new
yeah,
transaction, then only it will go to process transaction, right?
go to process. In
Okay.
process transaction, mainly we are doing everything right, sir.
Yes, the all the
That
business
means
related thing will come in
everything
process
okay.
transaction. That's why you can have three things here, right? You can have only three routes. It can be successful,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
can be a business exception, it can be a
Business or
system.
system.
So only system exceptions are retried because it will kill and retry. There is no point in retrying the
Yeah,
business
yeah,
exception.
yeah,
So in case of success and
yeah,
business
yeah,
exception, it will again go to and get the next transaction.
yeah. And this is completely like a process transaction. I say means it is completely state machine, right? In
Yes.
that I can use flow charts or
Yeah.
anything, right, sir?
So you can use it inside here, right? Inside the process.xaml, you are free to use any flowchart, any sequence. You can use anything, right?
Yeah,
But this core RE
yeah,
framework is built on state machines.
yes, yes, yes.
Okay. Okay, so that is all for this quick summary of RE framework. I would like to wrap this video here. All the links of the complete RE framework along with the use cases are available in the description for your reference. Feel free to explore the videos and let me know in case you have any queries or any clarifications required. I would like to wrap this video here. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please do subscribe to the channel and happy automation.